What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you could have me, yes, little old me, on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. I like to do the weddings and the corporate parties and the karaoke jams. Yeah, I like it. I like doing it all. Parties are my specialty. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. But for today, let's learn together on What Makes You Smarter. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, April 4th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, CDC recommends Americans wear masks in public. President Trump on Friday announced new guidelines from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention that say Americans should wear protective masks when in public to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus. Americans should not use medical masks, which should be reserved for healthcare workers, the CDC says. Instead, when leaving their homes, Americans should wear cloth coverings, which can be homemade. The guidance does not replace social distancing recommendations. Trump repeatedly described the mask guideline as, quote, voluntary, end quote, and said he wouldn't be wearing one himself. The recommendation, which also applies to healthy or asymptomatic people, came after a lengthy debate within the Trump administration and among top health experts over whether it should apply to Americans even when outside of coronavirus hotspots. This is according to the New York Times and The Week. Number 2, unemployment climbs to 4.4% as economy loses 700,000 jobs. The U.S. economy lost 701,000 jobs in March, and the unemployment rate rose from 3.5% to 4.4% amid the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported Friday. This ended a record 113 straight months of gains, as this is the first decline in payroll since September 2010. Economists have warned the worst is yet to come in the next report, as this data is based on a survey conducted during the week ending on March 14th, before many businesses had to close due to the pandemic. According to CNBC, quote, some 2/3 of the drop came in hospitality industry, particularly bars and restaurants forced to close during the economic shutdown, end quote. The Labor Department reported Thursday that 6.6 million initial unemployment claims were filed last week, the highest weekly number ever recorded. This is according to NBC News and CNBC. Number 3, New York calls for more healthcare workers as coronavirus deaths spike. New York on Friday reported 562 new deaths from COVID-19, bringing the state's total death toll to 2,935. Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, said in his daily briefing. This was the highest single-day increase in deaths so far in the state. The number of new hospitalizations, 1,427, also reached a new high. New York City residents got an emergency alert Friday afternoon calling on any licensed healthcare workers to aid in the overwhelmed hospital system. New York has reported by far the most COVID-19 cases of any state in the country, reaching 102,863 as of Friday. Cuomo also signed an executive order to allow the state to take ventilators and personal protective equipment from hospitals and private sector companies that don't need them and redistribute them to hospitals that do. This is according to CNBC. Number 4, Supreme Court cancels oral arguments set for April. The Supreme Court on Friday canceled the oral arguments scheduled for April due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. After having previously postponed March oral arguments, the court on Friday also did so for the 9 cases that would have been argued starting on April 20th. Quote, the court will consider rescheduling some cases from the March and April sessions before the end of the term, if circumstances permit in light of public health and safety guidelines at the time, end quote. The public information officer, Kathleen Arberg, said, quote, the court will consider a range of scheduling options and other alternatives if arguments cannot be held in the courtroom before the end of the term, end quote. Decisions will still come in cases that were already argued. This is according to NBC News and The Washington Post. Number 5, China mourns coronavirus victims. Commemorations were held throughout China on Saturday as the country mourned thousands who died in recent months of the novel coronavirus. All forms of entertainment were suspended. Flags flew at half-mast throughout most of the country, and 3 minutes of silence were observed nationwide. President Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders paid silent tribute in front of the national flag in Beijing. Per the Associated Press, the commemorations were particularly poignant in Wuhan, the city where the virus originated. Deaths in Wuhan count for 75% of all reported COVID-19 fatalities in China. Wuhan has been under quarantine since January 23rd, but that will be lifted next week. Much of the rest of the country is cautiously emerging from the epidemic, and life is reportedly gradually returning to normal, although fears of a second outbreak loom. This is according to the Associated Press and Reuters. Number 6, Trump fires IG who informed Congress of Ukraine whistleblower complaint. President Trump on Friday fired Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson, who informed Congress about the whistleblower complaint regarding Trump's communications with Ukraine that eventually led to his impeachment. The president said he, quote, no longer, end quote, has the, quote, fullest confidence, end quote, in Atkinson. The Trump administration has already removed numerous officials from their posts involved with Trump's impeachment proceedings, including Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a former National Security Council official, and former U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland. Others, like former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, resigned. Atkinson won't immediately be removed. The statute for the Intelligence Community Inspector General requires both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to be informed of a dismissal with 30 days notice, so there won't be an official change until next month. This is according to The Guardian and CNN. Number 7, Biden to launch VP Selection Committee. Former Vice President Joe Biden said Friday he told his last remaining Democratic presidential primary competitor, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont, he will begin the process of vetting potential cabinet and vice presidential candidates. He said he's launching a committee to select a running mate sometime in mid-April. Biden has emerged as the overwhelming favorite for the Democratic nomination, but he informed Sanders about the decision because he didn't, quote, want him to think I'm being presumptuous, end quote. But Biden said the process takes time, so he wants to get a head start. The former vice president also said he's asked former President Barack Obama for advice on candidate selections. This is according to NBC News and Politico. Number 8, Coast Guard suspends Chesapeake Bay search for RFK's granddaughter. The Coast Guard suspended its search for Maeve Kennedy Townsend McKeon and her 8-year-old son Gideon on Friday night after the two were reported missing in the Chesapeake Bay near Annapolis, Maryland, a day earlier. The 40-year-old McKeon, a public health and human rights lawyer who serves as the executive director of the Georgetown University Global Health Initiative, is the granddaughter of former U.S. Attorney General and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, Democrat, New York. McKeon's mother, former Maryland Lieutenant Governor Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, said earlier in the evening the search had turned from a rescue mission into a recovery mission. This is according to the Washington Post and CNN. Number 9, CNN's Brooke Baldwin tests positive for coronavirus. Brooke Baldwin, who anchors CNN, In the afternoon, announced Friday, she has tested positive for the novel coronavirus. In an Instagram post, Baldwin said she's had chills, aches, and a fever, and that the symptoms, quote, came on suddenly yesterday, end quote. Baldwin also said that, quote, I've been social distancing, end quote, and, quote, doing all the things we're being told to do, end quote. But, quote, still, it got me, end quote. Although she described herself as, quote, one of the lucky ones, end quote, since she doesn't have any underlying medical conditions, in her Instagram post, Baldwin said, quote, I look forward, end quote, to getting back on TV, quote, and seeing you real soon, end quote. This is according to The Week and CNN. Number 10, Grammy-winning singer Bill Withers dies at 81. Bill Withers, the beloved singer behind the classic songs, including Lean on Me and Lovely Day, has died at 81. Withers' family announced his death from heart complications on Friday morning. Withers won 3 Grammy Awards for Ain't No Sunshine, Just the Two of Us, and Lean on Me. He last released a new album in 1985. Quote, we are devastated by the loss of our beloved, devoted husband and father, end quote, Withers' family said. Quote, a solitary man with a heart driven to connect the world at large with his poetry and music. He spoke honestly to people and connected them to each other. In this difficult time, we pray his music offers comfort and entertainment as fans hold tight to loved ones, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, April 4th, 2020. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. I hope you're all doing all right out there. Leave some comments below. Let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods. This is Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for